and welcome to the Astranti Top 10 Most Likely Issues to Come Up in the Unseen Material for the February 2018 MCS exam on Nortan and the FOSSC. So just as a prelude, this video will go through essentially the top 10 topics which we believe are most likely to come up based on the pre-seen and the sort of annotations and suggestions we feel are coming from the pre-seen. So, without much further ado, let's move on to how this kind of works. So, the basis is often on what the pre-seen focuses on, also based on what's important to the strategy imposed by the pre-seen company, in this case, the FOSSC and Nortan. Furthermore, it's backed up by experience of not only my past exams and the typical issues I have seen, but also a lot of my colleagues and the company at large have all gone through these kind of exams, and they themselves relay back roughly what they have understood from those exams. So, that's how we come to our choices. Let's move on to how you can prepare along with us for these issues. Well, you want to prepare the key models. So for that, you might want to look at the strategic analysis video, which we also do. And you also want to practice mock exams to cover these key issues. To sort of add a nice layer of contextual information, you want to find relevant real-life examples. This can be found in the industry pack, which we also do. And even sample paragraphs are given to you in the final chapter of the industry pack. So, if you want to skip some of the legwork, you know where to find our products. But, before I ramble on that kind of thing, we're going to focus on the advantages and key disadvantages of the points that we feel will come up. So let's move on. So, issue number 10, funding. So, the key thing here is that it's the easiest F2 topic for them to test. It comes up so often, it's almost an anomaly when it doesn't come up. So it often finds its way into our top 10, and in this case, it's no different. So just to run down quickly what's on the slide without boring you to death, it is commonly examined, it's mentioned as part of your MCS guide, and cash will be needed to support a new investment project. And then there's a sentence about Nortan having a history of growth via acquisition. So it could be a funding question based on acquisitions, but also just in terms of new projects, because we know profits are declining. And the best way to solve that is a positive MPV project. So that's why we've chosen funding. What are the likely issues? Well, acquisition, as I mentioned, new projects, and you also just want funding for natural growth, organic growth. The company can't grow unless there's cash flow running through it. You need money for that. However, organic growth is probably the least likely of these three, given that Nortan as a group have a relatively strong cash reserve for working capital, that kind of thing. So this kind of topic is often a bolt-on topic, so like your topic 2 of a large question on investment as a whole. So keep that in mind as we move forward. So the key points that we suggest, and I suggest you should raise, is that revenues have grown by 18% or so. So this will be important to attract investors. And essentially we do want equity capital because we know the gearing is not so great currently for Nortan. However, profit has declined by almost 35%. This is a bit of a problem when we consider the equity capital element. So these kind of things are definitely the considerations you're going to bring up to your make-believe board of directors when you're furnishing a report based on any kind of investment or attracting investment. And as mentioned, relatively high gearing. Equity is really, really necessary. However, if investors are a little bit shaky, you can point towards significant dividends. There's quite a lot of dividends being paid out. That's a large chunk of retained earnings being pumped into dividends. So, Funding, revenue's grown, profits declined, but they pay loads of dividends. So there is this mixture that you can incorporate to your answer. Now, you would have seen this quite a lot through the study text, the matching principle, cash for small projects, debt funding for huge assets. It's quite straightforward. Just a reminder as we go through, you want to remember the appropriate types of funding for different aspects. So the theories that you can use are essentially the debt versus equity. Likewise, you can utilize Mendelow's matrix. So debt has the quick access elements, low cost relatively speaking, because dividends can get quite high, especially in the oil industry. There's a habit of paying really large dividends in the oil industry, and this is quite a topic for debate. But before I digress, let's move on to issue 9. A new project or asset. So, just briefly, the reason why this is coming up is, as mentioned, profits are on the decline. There needs to be something new to reinvigorate cash flow and general revenues that actually results in a higher profit. Because as we've seen from the financials, revenues went up, profits went down. Now, there might be a variety of reasons for that, but ultimately, we all know that profit is what investors want, and it's what keeps shareholders happy. So we need to find a way to cover that. So the models that you can use are ANSOFs. You need to work out what the kind of project / potential new product, maybe of renewables, whether it's a new market and a new product, or simply penetrating the market via an existing product in an existing market. Also, you want to remember your MPV analysis, quite straightforward, probably been seeing it quite a lot through F1, F2 now, and you want to make sure that you reference the reliability of any estimates that you make and whether the cost of capital is appropriate. It is quite an important thing to mention. So, the likely issues that we think they'll use this kind of topic for is exploration. So, the oil industry fuels off exploration. So a decreased oil price means that they might want to search for more. However, it needs to be very well documented in terms of NPV analysis because of this decreasing oil price. Essentially, an exploration project will boost profits if a suitable project is found. The problem is that there is a large amount of risk involved, so you can bring in your risk management elements from P2. Likewise, they do have a large cash reserve to invest in this kind of project should they need to, but likely they would want equity capital as well. They also could do a new product, such as renewable energy, or they could move to fracking. We haven't seen that mentioned. Whilst it's not a new product per se, it's definitely a new way of acquiring it, almost like a product in the sense that it produces the product that they ultimately sell, but at a very different way that changes the whole dynamic of what it costs and the carbon content, things like that. So keep that in mind. New project, product, or asset. So what do you need to raise with this kind of question? Well, MPV is one of the biggest ones. If it's not positive MPV, don't bother. Pretty much simple, as we all know. So make sure the MPV element is definitely running throughout this kind of answer. Is it consistent with the CSR principles? For example, we don't know much about Nortan's environmental commitments, but should they give you it in the end scene? You can't go and recommend fracking if they are big on the environment. It's, quite simply at odds. So it has to be consistent with the principles that the company undertake. Likewise, is it consistent with strategy? So, a new project based on a joint venture could work maybe because their strategy is essentially organic growth with some acquisition elements. So they do have this external focus perhaps on growth. Likewise, is it consistent with CSFs? The CSF for Nortan is probably innovation at first when we look at the FOSSC, given how it works and how much automation is involved. Likewise, project management, reputation, Safety is probably a key CSF, given that the oil industry has all these harmful chemicals involved. How will it be funded? Links back to the funding issue from before. You can interweave these problems together, and as I said, funding is often a bolt-on to these kind of new project issues. But you must make a recommendation and include your justification, otherwise you're going to lose a bunch of marks. You have to answer the question. It's all well and good to give them MPV analysis and all this jazz, but if you don't give them that final paragraph that tells you exactly what you think they should do with a justification and what they can do to put that into motion, you're going to lose substantial marks. So make sure you answer the question at hand. Hello, it's me again. I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time to first extend my hope that you enjoyed the free sample that you've just viewed, but also to just sort of explain what else Astranti do to help you pass your exam really effectively, provided you found our sample particularly interesting and insightful, of course. So, of course, we have a study text for every module, ranging from P1 to F3, and the certificate level is also free on our website. So we have study texts throughout the CIMA course, every module you could hope to study. The certificate level are free, as I mentioned, and then the rest of them, ranging from P1 to F3, are all available to purchase. Alongside this, if you're not so much a study text kind of student and you prefer a visual way of learning, we have the course videos. We essentially break down the study text into bite-sized presentations with a walkthrough, and it's a very engaging way of explaining the course. Following this, we have the pre-scene analysis, where we break down each pre-scene sitting into a number of videos, going through the whole document, but also adding a top 10 recommendations for what will come up in the exam, and also a strategic analysis where we put all the models you'd find in E2, for example, to the pre-scene itself, whichever that may be at the time. Alongside this, we provide an industry analysis. This is a document and accompanying video which help you give that contextual information in your exam. So, for example, if the pre-scene is on the oil industry, the industry analysis will break down the oil industry, the current topics, trends, issues, what the competitive market looks like, all those kind of aspects, all condensed into one so you can spend your time wisely in your study period. Following on from this, when you actually want to practice all this knowledge, we have mock exams for all of our materials. So StudyText has a generic mock exam based on the module, whereas the pre-scene analysis has mocks available to purchase that are based on that specific pre-scene, that are targeted to the key issues we believe will come up. And if you're not content with just doing those mock exams and practicing that way, we have a marking and feedback system where you can purchase the ability to send in your paper, have it marked by a CIMA qualified accountant, and get personalized feedback on whether you can improve X or Y area. And sort of finally, if you will, if you're feeling really underprepared and that exam is coming really soon, the masterclasses are offered by Astranti, and they're essentially a crash course in anything you could want for that topic. So if it's a masterclass on the pre-scene, it's going to give you absolutely everything that you could possibly need to know about the pre-scene in one rather really condensed sitting. Likewise, if it was the F3 masterclass, you would have all of F3 gone through in a very crash course style presentation and video link. You can also purchase it post-stream as opposed to viewing it live, all these kind of aspects. We are very confident that these materials will help you get the exam success that you want. So we have a pass guarantee, provided you fill out a form which demonstrates that you have utilized our materials to a large extent and actually taken the time to study them, and you have unfortunately failed. We will offer you the same materials again for the next sitting as a consolidatory offer to ensure that you can get back on the horse and get that exam grade that you want. With that said, thank you very much for watching the sample video. I hope you enjoyed it and it gives you a lot of confidence in Astranti and your CIMA future.